On 12th of December, we marked how many years as a republic?
60.
60. 60 years.
Yep.
Why? And in those 60 years, since Kenya became independent, Kenya has had relations with the world for all those years.
Yes.
And very many countries. Established diplomatic relations with very many countries in those years, and some have stood strong, have been very, very beneficial. With one of those countries is Japan. Kenya-Japan relations have lasted all those many decades. The ambassador of Japan to Kenya, His Excellency Okaniwa Ken, is our next guest. Balozi, good morning.
Good morning, and nice to see you again, Eric.
Nice to see you too. Happy New Year.
Yes, same to you.
Yeah, karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation. Again, that's the hot seat of the Situation Room. Looking back at 60 years of relations between Kenya and Japan, and the diplomatic ties and what we have been able to gain as a people of the two countries. To welcome you to the conversation, City, as you know, every week he goes into one African country, picks a proverbs from that country, and every day he gets us a proverb. This week he's gone to Nigeria. You know, the sheng of Nigeria is pidgin. Now, he cannot speak fluent pidgin, but he's learnt very well and very fast. He's going to read the proverb in pidgin, but she is going to give it to us in proper pidgin, and then she will also translate it into English. City,
Right.
go.
Let me massacre this particular. No matter how lizard they go press up, no go get chest like alligator.
I have to say, I love the movements with the hands when you're reading it. It's great.
That's to encourage me to keep going.
You feel like a lizard when you do this.
Yes, so that's how these creatures seem to walk.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, now then there's a chameleon that sort of like, yes, back and
That's
forth,
the
back and forth.
Ndu?
No matter how lizard they do press up,
Yes,
in chest no go be like alligator.
yes.
Okay. So if I say that in English, no matter how many press ups a lizard does, its chest or its muscles will never be like that of an alligator.
I'm not sure what to take of that.
Try.
Try. Give it a try.
The lizard cannot never be an alligator.
Yes.
Yes.
You cannot try to be someone you are not.
That's it.
Yes.
The bottom line.
Hard as you may try, you cannot be someone else. You are who you are. Yes.
Well said, Ambassador. Now, Kenya and Japan have had relations for very many years, and there are very many things that we've looked at over the years in terms of what we've been able to achieve as a country, how we have related as a country. We've had conversations here, even now, about Kenyans going to study, live, and work in Japan. We have seen very many companies from Japan come and establish here in Kenya. We've seen Japanese people who've come and worked here in this country. We've seen projects that have been supported by Japan. In a nutshell, how would you define the relations between Kenya and Japan?
It's a very good question and difficult to answer. But we have had 60 years of diplomatic relations. And in those 60 years, I have seen that we have had so many different exchanges, not only at the government level, but also at the grassroots level, and people studying in Japan, getting training in Japan, and then Japanese coming to Kenya to work with Kenyans to promote development, such as the volunteers from JICA, and it has been a very, very intense and very friendly relations over the years.
And we've seen very many projects that have been initiated by Japan and the government of Japan in this country. Can you highlight a few?
Yes. Well, there are some major infrastructure projects that we have done through our development aid. But first of all, Kenya is the largest recipient of our bilateral official development assistance in whole of sub-Saharan Africa. And I think that says quite a lot about our relationship. And we have a lot of involvement in many parts of the country. So if you look at along the coast, we have supported the construction of the Moi International Airport in Mombasa. We have supported the Mombasa port development, and the recent project expanded the area of the port by 1/3. And that is bringing in revenues for the government, promoting more goods to be shipped in and out, and also helping the jobs and economy of the people. And then there's also the Muea irrigation scheme, where we built the most recently Tiba Dam, and this is going to expand the network of irrigation so that people will be able to plant rice and other agricultural produce where before they were not able to grow because of lack of water. We have supported Okaniwa geothermal power plant. About half of the capacity for geothermal electricity is supported by cooperation from Japan. And today, what is remarkable is that the Kenyan engineers, they are able to explore for geothermal resources underground so that they know where they should build a new geothermal power plant. And this is thanks to the training that they have received in Japan.
Why has Japan chosen to go so in-depth with Kenya in its development? Because like you said, Kenya being the largest recipient of aid from Japan, why has Japan decided to go? And in very many sectors, infrastructure, when we look at roads, we are looking at infrastructure when it comes to energy, energy infrastructure, provision of energy. Why across so many sectors?
First of all, I think that the Kenya is one of the few countries in the area which has maintained a democratic form of government, and it has been very stable, and it is the anchor of the East Africa region, and based on that, we built up so many links and cooperation over the years. I think this is one of the most biggest factors why Japan has been focusing on cooperation with Kenya. And also, as a result of our cooperation with Kenya, the level of education is highest in the region. And so there are sort of trained people who we can work together with so that the fruits of our cooperation also can be shared with other countries in the region and beyond. So, for example, the cooperation we had with KEMRI is allowing KEMRI to train medical experts from other countries in the region. And this has really helped in dealing with the corona pandemic. And this is helping with other infectious disease. So this is just one example, but I think our cooperation is not only about benefiting Kenya, but it's also benefiting the whole African region. For example, in fighting infectious disease. And this is a common good for the humanity.
This is 60 years of relationships. How long have you been in Kenya, Your Excellency?
So I have been here 2 years, and I am the 20th ambassador of Japan to Kenya. So during those last 6 years, I have only been here for only 2 of the last 60. So I cannot say a lot, but still I learned a lot about what happened in those 60 years. Because when we are celebrating the 60 years of our diplomatic relations, we had we organized photo exhibitions. We also reached out to those Kenyans who were trained or educated in Japan. And so I have had a lot of conversation about what sort of experience they had and what sort of friendships they have with Japanese people.
The assistance and the partnership that Japan has had with Kenya in academia, in research, in higher education, that spans very, very many decades. But if I were to bring the discussion to the present and look at something that we've been grappling with for the longest time, universal health care, can you tell us what it is that the country of Japan has done to assist Kenya with its goal of trying to achieve universal health care?
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for the question. The universal health care is a very important aspect of any country's development. Japan is we introduced universal healthcare in 1961, and we are trying to use our experience to work with Kenya to promote universal healthcare. And it is right that Kenya is attaching importance to achieving this, because for any country you need to have a healthy population to develop. And we have been supporting the doctors from Kenya with their particular areas of specialty. We have been working on promoting the system of sort of the universal health care. We have been also right now supporting accountability of how the funding is used in healthcare, and this is a very broad area and there are so many aspects of universal healthcare, and we also have supported Kenya by providing financing for universal healthcare. So this is a very various aspects of universal healthcare that we have been involved, and we are looking forward to universal healthcare being available for all the people in this country.
Would you say that the universal healthcare program you have in Japan is successful?
Yeah, well, we think that we are making progress, and I think what we have seen is that the level of the diagnosis or the level of the services have improved. We have seen that doctors are now able to diagnose the disease that the patients have and then provide them with appropriate medication and treatment. I think it cannot be achieved overnight. And there are many challenges such as the access to the patients or patients having access to hospitals. We also support the construction of hospitals and clinics so that there is access for people who are in faraway areas as well.
Ambassador, when you look back over the 60 years and the relations between the two countries, and then look at the amount of aid that you've given the country and look at the cooperation that you've had, people often don't remember that, Japan has played a role until you see a JICA and then you hear someone saying, there were Japanese who were involved in this particular project. But over the years, the conversation has been that when it comes to aid in Africa, aid in the sub-Saharan Africa, aid into Kenya, aid has been coming from the West. And for many years, there has been the politics of when aid is coming from the West and Western countries, it comes with conditions that, you must then meet certain conditions. You must be democratic in this particular manner. You must have this kind of checks and balances and accountability for us to continue giving you the aid. But we don't hear those kind of conversations when it comes to Japan. What do you ask for in return to giving Kenya aid?
Well, our approach to supporting development countries such as Kenya is, I think, different from other countries. One is that we attach the utmost importance to the ownership of the recipient country. So this is why in our process, when we try to identify how can we cooperate with Kenya? We have intensive discussion of what are the needs and what does the Kenyan government want to achieve. And so we spend a lot of time in this discussion so that Kenyan government is in the driver's seat. And when we support them, we are trying to achieve the self-reliance of the government so that when we are finished with our project, the Kenyan government is able to continue with that activity on its own. And so this is a very different way of working maybe compared to some other donors. And so this is a very different aspect. Another thing is that we attach importance to promoting economic growth through our activities. And this is because unless you have economic growth, people are not able to promote their own livelihoods, but also for the government to have tax revenues and to be able to sustain all the activities that is being sustained by using the revenues from the tax. And so we are one of the few donors who attach actually a particular focus also on economic growth and how to promote it. And this is why in our cooperation on the various road and other infrastructure projects, we look very closely at how can we promote the private sector.
Is there satisfaction that there's been sustainable economic growth in Kenya with the cooperation from Japan? One would assume that because Japan keeps supporting, that then there is satisfaction. But truly, if you look at one of the pegs being sustainable economic growth in any country where Japan will then put its assistance, then the question is Japan satisfied with the economic growth at whatever level that is or is not happening in Kenya at the moment?
Well, I'm not sure whether the question should be framed in whether we are satisfied or not with the growth of the Kenyan economy. Because I think it's for the Kenyan people to say whether they are satisfied or not. We are merely trying to, I think, work together to support this the quest for economic growth. But in any case, I think the Kenyan economy has been, I think despite the recent difficulties in the international economic situation, which is coming from the higher cost of oil, fuel, or higher cost of food imported and other imported products, and also the strong dollar and the devaluation of the Kenyan shilling, I think the Kenyan government has been relatively robust. And this is thanks to the efforts being made by the economic authorities of the government, and so we appreciate the way in which the Kenyan government is trying to deal with the situation. I think the current situation is not an easy situation, even for Japan. And we are facing more or less the same problems. But despite that, the Kenyan government has been doing relatively well, not to be defaulting on its loans, and also to be able to achieve about 5% economic growth. So this is quite an I think achievement despite the circumstances.
You mentioned taxpayers' money. Taxpayers' money, does that form the bulk, or rather what forms the base of this development aid that Japan would give to, benefactors around the world? What forms the base of that?
Yes, the official development assistance budget comes from the Japanese taxpayers, money. So this is at the basis. But but this is not a big amount compared to the sort of the size of the Kenyan economy or compared to the sort of private business activities and private financing. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to use our official development assistance to leverage and to bring in more Japanese private financing or more Japanese companies to invest or do business in the country.
Okay.
You know, every time we talk of bilateral facilities, loans, and multilateral, there's always an interest attached to it. I say this because one of the big problems we have right now in the country is on debt repayment. Just so that we understand, when a country like Japan, say, lends a country like Kenya money, what sort of percentages do you charge?
Yes, that's a very easy question. So we are right now supporting or doing cooperation on the Mombasa Gate Bridge.
Yes.
And this is actually quite a huge project involving many millions of dollars. The interest rate on the loans that we are providing for the Mombasa Gate Bridge, it is 0.1%. And the grace period is 12 years. And once the grace period is finished, it is a 40 years repayment period.
At 0.1%.
So this is a very concessional term when you consider that for a commercial loan from a foreign bank, it's about 10% interest rate, 2 years grace period, and 3 years repayment period. It is about a one-digit difference. And so you may understand, how we are trying to, promote the construction of infrastructure for the long term with a very concessional terms. Japan attaches importance to fair and transparent development finance, and maybe some other. There are some other donors which may not be following this kind of finance, but I think that it is important to have fair and transparent development finance in order to promote accountability of what the government is taking on, and also to help the money being used most effectively for development purposes. And another point I would just mention is that if you think about just as individuals, human beings, individuals take on a lot of debt when they are younger in order to buy houses or in order to buy cars and then pay for their child's education. Countries in the process of developing, they need more money than they have. This was the same situation with Japan. We borrowed a lot of money from the World Bank when we were reconstructing after the war, so there's nothing bad about borrowing money from outside, as long as it is being used for productive purposes, and that it will gain more benefits for the future. And so projects such as the Mombasa Gate Bridge, which will alleviate traffic congestion and also promote the movement of people and goods between the Mombasa Island and other parts, the Kwale County, this will really bring in a lot of benefits for the people and for the economy. And so it will repay what has been borrowed. So this is a very important point that I think people should understand.
Our guest this morning is His Excellency Ambassador Okaniwa Ken. He is the Ambassador of Japan to Kenya. We're looking back at 60 years of relations between Kenya and Japan. What have the benefits been to Japan to Kenya? So far, we've talked about the benefits to Kenya. We'll talk about the benefits to Japan. I want to look at the example you've just given us of the Mombasa Gate Bridge, where the government of Japan has extended a facility to Kenya of a lot of money to build this bridge at 0.1% interest, with 12 years grace period, as in don't start repaying until after the 13th year, and then from then pay up to the 40th year. This is 52 years of credit to the country at only 0.1%. In all ways, this is free money. Why would Japan do this? How does it benefit Japan to actually put your money in Kenya for 52 years?
I think Japan is currently, I think, the third largest economy in the world. And I think we are interested in seeing development across the world, including in the African continent. And because if there is no development in Africa, and there is a lot of tension or conflicts resulting in refugees issues and people being killed, this is a very negative factor for not only Africa but for the world. And we want to see a future of the world in which people are able to make a living, a decent living, and that there are people living in harmony. And so this is coming out from our sort of a belief that the better world is better for Japan.
And what then has Japan benefited from this relation? Because we can see we have benefited a lot. We have infrastructure, we have geothermal, we can now tap our geothermal resources. We have dams, we have roads, we have education, we have healthcare, we have bridges, we have universities. What has Japan gotten from Kenya?
I wouldn't say there is direct benefit to Japan or Japanese from all these projects that we have undertaken. But I think in general, the feeling of friendship between our two people is very strong, and also there are more Kenyans who feel that today they are they're very interested in visiting Japan or studying in Japan. Maybe because there is a lot of goodwill towards my country, and there was recently a terrible earthquake in Japan. But when there was a terrible earthquake and tsunami in 2011, there was an outpouring of a very feeling of sympathy towards Japan in Kenya. And I think these kind of things are things which may not be obvious, but it is very important in the sort of relations between countries.
You know, I've always found it interesting that, let me ask the question, then I'll say what is interesting. From the time after the Second World War, how long did Japan take to repay all the money it borrowed from these international lenders like IMF? Because you did borrow and you didn't pay. How long did it take?
Well, roughly, I think the war ended in 1945.
Yes.
We began reconstruction.
Yes.
We were getting aid from UNICEF, or we have been getting loans from the World Bank, and
Yes.
and that's how we built a sort of railway, bullet train network, and so on. I think we basically managed to finish repaying around 1990s.
Okay. How then, when a country like Japan has its own problems, does it manage to have money to help countries like Kenya? Because I look at our own country and I marvel. We can barely breathe. And I'm thinking, how do we get to the point where we can have resources, or we can plan and organize ourselves so that we can also help other countries?
Well, that is a decision for the people and the government to decide. But I think it's a matter of allocating resources that the government has collected to various objectives. And I wouldn't say that the aid budget is has a very big share in the total budget of Japan. But I think even if the amount is not so big, it is important for the people to understand why we are doing this. So in Japan, we make a very conscious effort to let people know that their taxes are being used for this or that, including supporting countries like Kenya. And in that sense, perhaps Kenya also look into, how the accountability of how the tax is being used should be explained to the people, so that people understand what their money is being used for. So maybe the budget, the 100% is the budget, and how this is being allocated to various uses, and how the people are benefiting from that. So we make a conscious effort to do this kind of, provision of information and explaining to people that their taxpayers' money are making a big difference.
They're changing the world. One of the benefits of relations, and also you could say one of the benefits of aiding countries, such developing countries, is the benefactor gets access to markets. So I would say that, for example, as a result of the relations between Kenya and Japan, of course, the balance of trade is skewed heavily towards Japan. Japan is able then to access the Kenyan market to export a lot of goods into Kenya. But then there would be the question of foreign direct investment. Have we seen investment by Japanese companies in this country, where then Kenya is able to be a manufacturing hub that can then also export some back to Japan?
Well, the cumulative amount of investments by Japanese companies in Kenya is roughly a little bit more than 24 trillion Kenyan shillings, which is maybe about 161 billion US dollars. Now, the Kenyan, because when Japanese companies think about doing business in the African continent, the first country they think of is Kenya. So the number of Japanese companies who have business operations based in Kenya has been on the increase. And I'm very pleased to see that since 2016, the number has tripled, and currently it's 114 companies based in the country. And we think that this is going to help with the not just selling Japanese products in the country, but perhaps some of them will also think about producing in Kenya. But this is not an easy task, because Kenya is not competing with Japan. It is competing with all the other countries in the world, where Japanese companies can set up factories. And so Kenya needs to, I think, if it wants to attract Japanese companies to invest in factories, they need to have a lower cost of, production, and such as electricity.
But Ambassador, let me just push back on this. So you've helped the country in infrastructure development. You've helped the country even in power, the Takwel Dam. You've helped the country in very many others. So you're already helping the country in setting the base, the infrastructural base that can support manufacturing and industry and growth of industry. Why won't you use the same goodwill that, for example, you've said the people of Japan has had in extending money to us at 0.1%, by saying companies go and set up factories in Kenya, so that then we also see that economic development of the country? Because as it is right now, the 114 companies, many of them are operating in Kenya as a base, but the manufacturing hub is still in Japan.
Well, the answer is very simple, because the government of Japan does not have any control over where the Japanese companies are going to invest in a factory. So it is the companies are responsible to their shareholders, and so they make their own decision of where they base their factories. So we have no influence over this kind of decision.
As we look at Japan as a country, obviously taking on heavily skewed towards development in different parts of the world, many have also talked about Japan being pacifist in the way in which it operates in the world, wanting to maintain a certain level, of non-conflict, peace kind of thing. And we then say that one of the ways towards safeguarding peace is to ensure that there's development. It's clear that economic development is almost an automatic guarantor of peace. Now, what's then Japan's outlook in the future? To maintain that same stance or to integrate it even more?
Well, I think for the African continent, I think it is important for the countries to have a good governance and promote economic growth and to promote democracy, so that the wealth that is being created is not dominated by sort of a small group of people. This is a very important aspect because I noticed that in many other African countries, this is not the case, and there is a lot of conflict within the countries, and there is a lot of, bad will between the various peoples in these countries. And this is a very big difference in Kenya, where it is relatively peaceful and people working together. And I think that this is a very important aspect of Kenya, that it is a anchor of stability. It is a country where there is freedom of speech and freedom of media. There is a democracy. There is a rule of law with a strong judiciary, and this is helping the stability of the country.
We've recently been... sorry.
No, please. I'm finished.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask this. We've recently been having conversations about and promoting education in Japan, and saying Kenyans can actually go and study in Japan. Kenyans can even work and live and work in Japan, because there is now a shift in terms of your population. You have an aging population. Kenya has a very young population. Let's talk about that demographic balance.
Thank you. Thank you. Japan is an aging society. So 30% of the Japanese are over 65 years old.
30%?
30%. Over 65.
In this country, UNCT are 2%, I think.
Yes. So you can imagine that in terms of demographics, there is a natural complementarity between our two countries. And so it is, ideally, it is, if it is possible for the Kenyans to learn Japanese, and then they are able to work with Japanese, they are able to find work in Japan and then be part of the economy and the society, contribute to how the economy and the society is functioning in Japan. At this point, our immigration policy does not really allow for a total liberalization of immigration from Kenya. But I think we are at a stage where more and more young people in Kenya are interested in Japanese culture and also studying in Japan. And this is a good start, because in Japan, the best universities in Japan are national universities, and the annual tuition fee is about 500,000 Kenyan shillings.
Wow.
And so when I meet Kenyans who send their children to study in the UK or the US and other countries, and they pay about 10 times that amount, So I don't see any reason why they cannot afford sending their children to study in Japan. And we have excellent education, and now Japanese universities are promoting receiving students from Africa, and they also have English-only courses. And they are very strong. They're very strong in science and engineering, particularly. And I think there is a natural sort of mutual benefit when we have more Kenyan students coming to study in Japan. Currently, there are 191 Kenyan students studying at Japanese universities or graduate schools, and only part of that, I think only about 10 or so are coming on Japanese government scholarships, which means that others are coming to Japan using other scholarships being provided individually, maybe by Japanese universities, or maybe some are actually paying for themselves. But I think having more young students being educated in Japan will open up opportunities for them, in the first instance, to be hired by Japanese companies based in Kenya.
Yeah.
And that will help them learn the Japanese sort of work ethics or Japanese work culture. And then the next step will be actually once they are more comfortable with Japanese language, they may be able to start working in Japan. So that is what I am hoping to happen. And a direct flight connecting Nairobi and Tokyo or Osaka will be a very big push for this kind of trend, which I have not yet seen happen.
How easy is it for one to get a visa to go and study in Japan?
That is not difficult.
What are the requirements?
I think one only, I guess the parents or whoever is sponsoring a student will only need to apply for the visa and pay about maybe $50 and submit a sort of a record of their bank account. That's it. You get the visa in 1 week.
That's nice.
That is for the student. What about somebody who just wants to visit Japan? How easy is it to get a visa? Is it the same process again?
Yes, it is also not difficult to have try to visit Japan for tourism. We only require these documents, and then we issue in about 1 week. So we have increasing numbers of Kenyans are visiting Japan. Because during the COVID pandemic, we stopped accepting foreign tourists, but since last year we have began accepting foreign tourists. So there's no obstacle to visiting Japan, and I can assure you that the cost of traveling, visiting Japan and staying there is much lower than Europe or the US.
For many years, Japan has been in the top 4 economies in the world, right? In fact, for many years as number 2. Now you're the 4th. That means you're a big producer, also big emitter when it comes to climate change. Looking at the kind of support activities that you've done in the country, for example, geothermal is green power. Is Japan taking advantage of that and saying we can trade this off? Because we've supported Kenya into exploring clean energy, then we can also trade it off in our carbon emissions.
Well, as a government, I think we have a framework for, I guess, sharing carbon credits generated from projects which reduce emissions or also carbon sinks through deforestation. But I think there's still some work to do on how to account for how much emission is actually being absorbed or being sunk in by the forests. So right now, JICA has an expert working on how to calculate how much carbon is being absorbed by the trees which are being planted in Kenya. And so once this kind of work is completed, Kenya can benefit from the planting of trees, not just from the trees themselves, but also the carbon sinks that they are sort of absorbing. And but I just want to say that the carbon credit market is only a very at this point a marginal percentage of the actual value of the projects themselves. So that it is not easy to sort of recoup the costs of investment only from the carbon credit. I think one can just consider this as a sort of added benefit.
Indeed. Your Excellency, we thank you very much for joining us today. And yes, we look forward to more and more cooperation between the two countries. And we are going to visit Japan city.
No, definitely. Just 1 week visa. We're going.
Yes,
His Excellency Okaniwa Ken is the ambassador of Japan to Kenya. He's been our guest this morning. Ambassador, karibu tena. You speak Swahili?
Not really. I just can only say a few words.
You can say asante.
Asante ni sana.
There you go.
Very good.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.